But how about we talk about some moves that actually have been made by the Steelers recently? Because we got a name or two that is no longer on the Pittsburgh Steelers. But we did make an addition as well. So here are moves that have been made just over the last couple days. We cut Darius Rush from the 53-man roster. We cut Jalen Elliott from the 53-man roster. We signed, though, offensive lineman, guard / tackle, a dude that could play all across the offensive line. We signed Max Scharping to the active roster from the Commanders practice squad. We also, these are more low-key moves. These are just little practice squad moves. We signed linebacker Eku Leota and running back LaMichael Perrine. Released Marcus Haynes and Jack Coletto from the practice squad. So we added 2, linebacker, running back, released Marcus Haynes, who I believe was a linebacker, and also fullback Jack Coletto. So we've been a little active. Nothing crazy, but like for people, that are Steeler fans like us that are paying attention to this team more than the national media, cutting Darius Rush is a little bit of surprise. I think he's been a solid addition for us. Rookie last year, 5th round pick. I think he was on the Chiefs. He was on the Colts. We picked him up mid-season, but every time he's out there, he's good. He doesn't get toasted or anything. And he's a good young player. Like he's a part of that like new wave of cornerbacks that we got with JPJ, Corey Trice, Darius Rush. He's 3rd on the list, but I like him as a depth guy. Just a young player that could be a part of the future. But for us to cut him, I guess we ain't that concerned about potentially losing him. Now, I feel like he'll get picked back up on the practice squad at some point. But, yeah, that was a little surprising to me. And then Jalen Elliott, I've never been that high on his game. I know some of you guys have talked about some of the plays that he's made before, whether it's in special teams or having some snaps on the defense. But, yeah, I'm not really stressing about releasing Jalen Elliott. He's another guy, though, too. He's hung around the last couple seasons. A guy that we've picked up, dropped on the practice squad, has been on the 53-man roster. Just like one of those back and forth guys. Obviously familiar with the Steelers organization because he's hung around a little bit. But one of those fringe dudes, and I wouldn't be surprised if we picked him back up on the practice squad. Darius Rush, though, is the more shocking release of those 2 names from my standpoint. But I guess we had to make some room to add a Max Scharping because we need the offensive line help. He's listed as a guard, but he'll even tell you that he can play all across the offensive line. He's done that before. Got experience. Like, this is actually, I think, a quality depth signing. He actually might play for us depending on what our young guys do and Mason McCormick and Spencer Anderson, because I think they're going to get the first crack at it. But if they're not playing up to par, Max Scharping's right there because he's been in the league for 5 years. Started 33 games with the Texans over the course of his first 3 seasons, was on the Bengals for the last 2 years, just a reserve, but familiar with the AFC North. Former 2nd-round pick, was 55th overall picked by the Texans in 2019. So he got a little bit of pedigree, 6'6", 324. I don't know who you're finding better right now for free, unless we were going to trade for a guard. Yeah, I don't know who you're finding better than a guy like Max Scharping that has this type of experience, but is just chilling there on the Commanders practice squad. So not against that at all. Something we need to do with all the injuries across this offensive line. Just absolutely ridiculous, man. It's so devastating what happened with this Steelers offensive line. With all the investment we made in that unit over the last couple seasons, I thought we were going to have at least an average group for this year, at least. But an average group would be an upgrade from what we were dealing with over the last 2-3 seasons. And an average unit, potentially even a top 10 elite type of group, depending on how our young guys would develop, like a Troy Fautano or a Broderick Jones, Zach Frazier. But to have, Fautanu out for the season, Herbig, who would have either been our starting center for week 1, even though I wanted Zach Frazier anyway, but Herbig was potentially going to start. But if Frazier was going to beat him out, he would be quality depth for us and be a plug-and-play guy for James Daniels going down. James Daniel, a guy that was being talked about as one of the best O-linemen in the league for 2024, he's out for the season with an Achilles. But we could have had Nate Herbig replace him. He's out for the season, though. And then Isaac Seumalo's been out for the first 4 weeks. He's hopefully coming back this week. But if not, we're going to have to rock with potentially 2 rookies for our starting guards, in addition to Zach Frazier, who's a rookie at center, even though he's balling out. And then Broderick Jones, who's in his second year and has had his ups and downs. Dan Moore, the steadying force over at the left tackle spot, the guy that we've been trying to replace year in and year out. He's been the available guy. He's been the healthy guy. He's been the guy that's playing most steady, honestly. Like Zach Frazier, he's been balling out, but some of these snaps have been an issue. James Daniel, he's been balling out, but he's not available. Broderick Jones, he has his ups and downs. He's been dealing with some injuries. So, like, Dan Moore, Mr. Steady out there on the left tackle spot. Crazy. But let me check in with you guys before we get into this Steelers-Cowboys preview. We got Uno Creations saying, what's up, Deke? First off, we're not bringing a wideout in before Sunday's game. But if we win Sunday's game, we might not bring in a wideout till right before the trade deadline. Our bye falls at the deadline also. So if we bring in a guy, it's going to be after that New York game, so he has time to settle in. You know, we don't like to rush guys, no matter the experience. Good point. If it was a Darius Slayton or a Cortland Sutton, I would agree with you, but this is Davante Adams. I don't think there's any reason. I don't think there has to be this patience for a Davante Adams. I could see us in general, though, being patient with our receiver core. But if we're actually interested in Davante Adams, we want to get Davante Adams, I don't think we got to wait. But in general, just talking about bringing an additional wide receiver, yeah, I could see us still waiting and seeing what this receiver room can do over the course of the next 3-4 weeks with Justin Fields playing the way that he has, because Justin Fields has been balling out and has been elevating some of these guys. Uncut Pit Talk says, if we get Adams, do we play GP next year? I'm assuming you mean, do we pay GP next year? Yeah, you do. You made the autocorrect there, or the correction. Yeah, I think you get to that point when you get there and you figure it out when it happens. I think we are going to pay GP next year because on the pace that he's on, he's going to be deserving of that extension before his 4th season. I think we're going to try to get something done. Whether or not he likes the number that we're offering, that's a different story. But that's even with a Davante Adams being here, because I don't think Pickens' numbers are going to take that much of a hit. I think both those guys are going to be eaten. I think it would be something like we talk to Adams, we try to figure something out, try to get an extension, restructure, lower his number, and then we get something with Pickens where Pickens' cap hit isn't anything egregious early on, but it's going to start ramping up as the years go on. So you can afford to have Davante Adams and Pickens there at the same time. And then, 3 years into the Pickens contract, if he's living up, you figure out a restructure with him and maybe you draft a couple receivers. You got a Roman Wilson in here. I think you're going to have some rotating guys once Adams gets up there in age and we move on from him. But I think that would be the scenario. You rock with Adams and Pickens for 2 or 3 seasons. You extend Pickens. You give him the contract this offseason. But then once Adams gets to, 34, 35, you probably move off of him. But then you're replacing him with a new receiver in the draft. Maybe Roman Wilson is balling out. So that's how I would see it happening. And GB 1974 brings up a good point here. He says there's always a way to restructure to have more cap space. Khan has been a pro at this for years. Exactly. I like this call. Kevin GZ says we're looking at the wrong Raider. We should get Jacoby Myers. Quiet guy, cap friendly, really good fit next to GP. It's not a bad call. It really isn't. That's almost like us trading for Christian Kirk with the Jaguars. If the Jaguars continue to implode, Christian Kirk wouldn't be a bad guy either. Don't have to give up as much as you would for Davante Adams. Obviously, they're not as good of a player as Davante, but we don't necessarily need Davante Adams. That would be a luxury pickup. We do need, well, it's tough because we don't need an extra receiver right now. At least not as much as we thought we would because of how Fields has been playing and how Muth has been picking up the slack a little bit. Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, they've been making some play. They've been making some timely catches. So our offense, I feel like, hasn't been lacking for weapon. Like, it hasn't been dismal. Like, we haven't been incompetent out there with the guys outside of Pickens. You see Darnell Washington getting a couple catches these last couple weeks. But you still see the, how do I want to put it? Like, I guess there's degrees to the word need. Like, we don't need a guy, but yeah, we need a guy. You know what I mean? We could use a guy. How about that? We could use a guy across from Pickens. We could use another outside receiver. A guy like Courtland Sutton, Christian Kirk, or Jacoby Myers, like you bring up in the chat. Someone that's a little bit better than what we got. But if you're talking about Davante Adams, like that's even better, you know? Uno Creation says DJ Moore would be perfect. I know. Yeah, that'd be awesome. The Fields connection and everything.